Don't go blaming God when you're the one who did something wrong. It's not God's problem. It's your problem. There's a little story in Judges chapter 11, verse 29. It's going to shock you. In fact, many of you have never read it. You're going to be stunned. It's even in the Bible. You're going to say to God, why would you put this in here? It's about a guy. His name is Japheth, and he's a judge. He's responsible for the Israelite people to oversee what happens, and he has a real problem. They're called the Ammonites. Ammonites keep on terrorizing the Israelites. So he says to God, I'm going to make a vow. If you give me victory over the Ammonites, when I go to my front door, whatever comes out of my front door, I'm going to sacrifice as a burnt offering. It's my vow, God, and it's between you and I. So whatever happens, that's what I'm going to do. Well, God gives him the victory. Guess what comes out of his front door? His only child. He doesn't have any boys. He doesn't have extra girls. He's got one daughter. She's the light of his life. And when she comes out of the front door, she's got tambourines. She's dancing. She's celebrating the fact that God has given her dad the victory, and Israelites, they're going to be spared. Instead of saying, oh, sweetheart, I made a vow before the Lord that was foolish, and I need to go back to God. He says, oh, you have caused me great trouble. And he decides to sacrifice her as a burnt offering. You go, wait, what? Why would you ever do something like that? Didn't you consider Exodus? You shall not murder. You know what she says to Dad? She says, I'm going to go out for 2 months and let me mourn the fact I'm never going to be a wife. I'm never going to be a mother. And then I'll come back and I'll submit to you in order to be a burnt sacrifice. In those 2 months, Dad never rethinks his position. He never says, clearly God doesn't want this to happen. And he sacrifices her. And from that moment on, the Israelites remembered her sacrifice. They both celebrated and grieved that particular day. Now, do you really think that's what God in heaven wanted? The devil will always tempt and test God's people to get them to do something for God, but get them to do something that isn't what God really desires, or the way that God doesn't desire it to be. That's what Lucifer did in Luke chapter 4. He tried to get Jesus to hear Psalm 91. Jesus, just jump off the Temple Mount. He'll give his angels charge over you, and they'll protect you in all of their ways. In other words, listen to the word that you gave Jesus, and then misuse it in order to take it and make it something it was never meant to be. What's Jesus do? He uses the Bible in the right way. Thou shalt not tempt or test the Lord your God. Do you know what God wants? He wants you to do it the right way. He wants you to do it his way. You can't do that without knowing the Bible. There's a little passage in 1 Samuel chapter 15. It's the prophet saying, God doesn't want your burnt sacrifices. He wants your obedience. Listen, friend, there comes a time in your life you don't have anybody else to blame. You can't blame your parents. You can't blame your spouse. You can't blame the way that you were raised. It's you and God. You don't listen to the people around you. It doesn't really matter what they think and what they say. It matters what God thinks, and it matters what God says. Do you know how you know what God thinks and what he says? You go to the Bible. Can I ask you a question? How do you use your talent? How do you use your treasure? How do you go about using your time? Don't keep blaming God that you're in debt. Something's not going right when you know that the borrower is servant to the lender. And you know that God wants you to use your money in ways that please him. Don't keep blaming God for it. Go to God about it and say, God, I want to honor you. How about your time? Are you using your time for you? Or are you using it for Jesus? How about the Sabbath day? Have you kept it holy? How about the 10 Commandments? Have you chosen to obey God even when it hurts? Who are you when it comes to the talents of your life? Are they God's or are they yours? All of us every day have choices to make. When you make the choice, don't blame God for it when they're your choices. In other words, go to the Word. Say, God, I want a vow, but I want my vows to be about what you want. When God gives you the victory, choose to give him the praise and the honor. If something's not going right, then say to God, God, I want to do the next right thing. Help me to correct this. Don't be Japheth, who decides that God and his vow to God matters more than even the people that he loves and serves. That's not a vow God ever wanted. Do what God says, and God will take care of it his way.